When I arrived here this morning, somebody asked me whether I would like a coffee and how many sugars. And I thought deep in the heart about the discussion my wife and our friends had last night. We were at some holiday resort and everyone was denouncing the use of sugar. And I told the lady, no sugars. And I felt so proud. And I thought to myself, Rotary is really life-changing. First time in my life I had coffee without sugar. And then I came to sit at this table. And lo and behold, there were packets of sweets. And my colleague Janet, whom I absolutely adore, opened her hers. And I thought, Janet, the devil comes in all shapes and sizes. And I had to open mine as well. So colleagues, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I acknowledge my colleagues from the various foundations. It's always an honor and it's always a pleasure to work with you. And John, for your help, John helped to build a beautiful exhibition at the FW de Klerk Foundation, where we looked at the transition from apartheid state to our democracy and so forth. And then last week, just earlier this week, I was asked by ENCA to participate in a television program. When I arrived there were approximately 30 people. I thought, wow, what's going to happen here? I sat down and they asked me what's my view. I said, we are very proud in terms of what we have achieved as a country. We have a constitution, and FW de Klerk, when he was president, took the courageous step to denounce apartheid, laid the foundation for dialogue, laid the foundation for negotiations, and ultimately we ended up with a beautiful constitution, a Bill of Rights. And there's three fundamental building blocks that for me should be the guiding principles in terms of how we build a future for all South Africans. One, the Constitution talks about human dignity. We come from a past where our human dignity was infringed upon. It's so important that we deal head-on with restoring people's dignity. And secondly, it talks about equality. Often people assume equality means equality in terms of brain power, in terms of material wealth. But that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution talks about equality in the sense that there must be equal opportunities. We must create an environment, where we break down the barriers of the past and so forth. And then thirdly, it talks to human freedoms, in other words, human rights. And those freedoms we hold dear. If you look at the statistics, it will tell you South Africa is certainly one of the freest countries in the sense that we can criticize the president, we can write in the newspapers, we can expose forms of corruption without the fear that will be hunted down as it is happening in many other countries. But then all hell broke loose. There were 30 young people that sat there, looked at me like, I am from a different planet. They said, what are you talking about? What is this constitution that you talk about? This constitution didn't change our lives in the townships. This constitution is this and that and the other. And yes, the 1994 negotiations, that was a complete sham. It was a sell-out, this and that. And as they were talking and the radical voices came to the fore, I became smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually got to a point where one of the young people sat at the back and says, this country must be burned down, it must burn. The Constitution must be burned. And I thought, wow, this is something, not shocking, it's something that we need to hear. Why is this voice, coming to the fore so strong, so absolutely almost vicious? What has happened the past 50 years that we have these kind of voices? One would have expected that this national constitution would have laid the basis for these young people to think completely differently. And it was You know, a scary thought that you sit with young people with this kind of mindset. And then you start to reflect on where did things go wrong. And the funny thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I thought this discussion was against me representing the FW de Klerk Foundation. No, no, no. And it got a different turn, because amongst the young people were those who were schooled in private schools, coming from top universities, wear grand clothes and stuff like that. Then it became a class discussion about those who are trapped in poverty and those who've got access to whatever out there. And then from a class discussion, it became an interest discussion. And you could see how the political parties that were present, the individuals that were present, me included, you know, started offending, you know, our little islands of interest. And I thought, wow, maybe, you know, there is still hope for South Africa, because amongst all of this turmoil, the different voices, there's still hope. But how do we create momentum in the process of restoring hope? And how do we action hope? Because hope, you know, can use something up there in the sky. And when we left the conversation, there was lovely food on the table. And all of the young people rushed over to the food. Yeah, and they load their plates. And then one came up to me, the one that says, we must burn. He says, Christo, I didn't actually literally mean burn. It just mean figuratively burn. I said, oh, now that you have the food on your plate, now you change your narrative. But it's also symbolic about people's aspirations. It remains unfulfilled, and I really appreciated what you outlined there. As long as these young people's, you know, aspirations remain unfulfilled, as long as they are marginalized, they push out, you know, we will remain a very, very divided country. We will remain a country in turmoil. We will remain a continent in turmoil. We do not really, you know, perhaps confront, you know, the whole issue of a race-based society transitioning into a class-based society. And nowadays we find a society that's focused on their own particular interests. You know, running to Trump and asking him, begging him for, you know, protect our interests. Forgetting that, you know, if this ship sinks, it sinks with all of us. Whether you live in Bishop Court or whether you live in Bishop Lagos, it's going to sink. And how do we ensure that we do not just plug the holes? Because that's what those young people were, you know, argue against. You're plugging the holes instead of building a ship. And we were supposed to build a new ship, you know, where we overcome the divisions of the past and the inequalities of the past. Because all that happened in the past 50 years, that gap, inequality gap, just grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's scary. It's scary. But I'm not here to talk you into depression. I'm also here to give hope. Because whilst my beautiful wife is enjoying the hot water pool there in Rheede, I better finish up here quickly. So, that's who we are, ladies and gentlemen. FW de Klerk Foundation. People often ask me, what the hell are you doing there? I said, you know what? If there's anything that we can take from FW de Klerk was the courage that he had to change course. Within 6 months of his presidency, he made that decision to bring apartheid to an end. If that would not have happened, we would have been a Gaza 30 years down the line, and even worse. So let us at least give him that credit. He has a lot of other things happening in the meantime, and it's my job to tell people, you know, let's use this institution as an institution of nation building, an institution of reconciliation, but also a institution that goes about facing the realities of South Africa head on and help to build a new ship, not just plug holes and serve the interests of specific groups. Beautiful moment there with Nelson Mandela, Bishop Tutu, Jakes Gerwel, FW de Klerk, coming together during the period of 1992 until, the deaths, and trying to play a role in forging unity within our country. So we have a legacy program. Please come visit us. We're just up in Parliament Street, and it's a beautiful building. We come enjoy a cup of tea and discuss, how do we work together to build our nation. So speakers that we've had in the past, premiers and so forth, and then very important, that guy with the green jacket. Yeah. Right, and it's a very sensitive subject for the people from New Zealand and from Australia and so forth, so let me not rub it in. It's very, very, bad of me to go and rub in the losses of other people. So we honored him for his role, and people can argue it's maybe a superficial role, but at least, these are all the type of things that we can do to build and foster unity within South Africa. In fact, I've asked him if I can still become a Springbok rugby player. Up to today, he never answers me. So a lot of work that we do amongst young people, sponsoring various activities, and this is monies that we receive from other institutions. The Nedbank Golf Challenge give us some money, and we invest it into preschool education. Being a teacher myself, being a music teacher, when I started off teaching kids how to play piano, how to sing, things like that, Janet also commented now, she said, "Oh, you beautifully harmonized the singing of the national anthem." I said to her, "That's the Saturday morning version. You must listen to the Sunday morning version." But be it as it may, so we've got a constitutional rights program, lots and lots of young people from all walks of life, from all different communities, and they are all trained in constitutional rights, and they apply their minds and thinking afresh about how do we, grow our country and use the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as a blueprint for that kind of development. So submissions in Parliament and so forth. We also have a human rights report card. And very important, it's a report card that reflects on how do we progress in terms of the various rights that are embedded in our national constitution. And then various speakers at various events. There you can see, breaking down the barriers that keep people apart, fostering unity and tolerance, but more so, having open debates as a means to confront the challenges that we face. So yes, lots of newspaper clippings and things like that, just to show how we make our voice heard. Then the Constitutional Advancements Program, also to young people that drive this program, also teaching young people in schools about the Constitution and how we can use the Constitution as a tool and our constitutional democracy as a tool to create a better life for all of our people. The big challenge, obviously, is that it's a piece of paper. Beautiful aspirations, beautiful values, and everything outlined. But if those things are not realized in practice, it remains a deferred dream for many, many people out there. So lots of activities in schools and so forth. There's our colleagues, as you can see. Right, beautiful. Yeah, okay, so yeah, sorry for this. So that's our leadership, Rheede de Klerk. She's the wife of the late President de Klerk, Christina Tuigman, chairperson. I'm the executive director, a very small staff and very dedicated people. And then the young people that are coming through the ranks, we train them and make sure that they, at the end of the day, when we leave, they can take up our positions. So ladies and gentlemen, please support the foundation. If you have a rich uncle or a rich aunt, please ask them to support us. On that note, enjoy your stay in Cape Town, take care of yourself, and continue with the good work. And use less sugar.